provincial government says we need to increase immigration to offset Newfoundland and Labrador's shrinking population and to help keep our economy healthy. But there are naysayers, you'll find a lot of them online, who say jobs are hard enough to get already without bringing in more foreign workers to compete for them. So, do immigrants steal our jobs, as some like to argue, or do they add a much-needed bump to the economy? Dr. Nimish Adhia is an associate professor of economics at Manhattanville College in New York, and he's visiting Newfoundland this week to talk about that very issue. He's in the studio this morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So let's get to the title of your lecture. Do immigrants steal jobs? I guess I'm asking for a spoiler here, but do they?
Well, the answer is yes and no. They steal jobs in a literal sense, in the sense that they work at jobs that could have been filled by locals. Well, in that sense, they also steal tomatoes because they eat tomatoes that could have been eaten by locals,
Okay.
and they steal apartments that could have been lived in by locals. But in other sense, if you think of jobs as economic opportunities, then it's not clear if immigrants diminish economic opportunities for the locals, because the presence of immigrants also creates jobs. Immigrants create jobs as consumers, as entrepreneurs, as investors, as workers who complement the skills of natives, as citizens, as taxpayers. And so if you look at the total economic opportunities available to locals, the answer is no.
Okay, so it's easy for me to walk by a construction site or walk into the airport and see somebody at work and say, hey, if that guy didn't have the job, my brother-in-law would have it. But the big picture is not nearly so simple.
Yes, that is exactly what we economists do. We look at the big picture by doing a lot of studies, and almost all the studies that have been done on this issue tend to find that immigration does not diminish the economic opportunities of natives. In fact, it expands it.
So there's an argument as well that bringing in foreign workers to work minimum wage jobs really helps perpetuate the minimum wage, the spread of minimum wage work, right? Because all these immigrants are available to work at very modest wages. Wouldn't business owners be forced to raise wages to attract local workers if, in fact, there was nobody around, say, to undercut the labor market, I guess you'd say?
Well, that's one possibility, that they would have raised the wages. Another possibility is they would automate those jobs. Another possibility is that those jobs would go elsewhere, or those jobs would not exist in the first place.
Where does the negativity come from that's associated with immigrants and the labor force? Does it get down to racism?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think there are non-economic concerns that people have about immigration regarding assimilation, as well as security concerns, and I think that's where a lot of opposition comes from. But as far as economic effects are concerned, I think that should be the least of people's concerns, because the answer in that case is an unambiguous benefit.
You've come here from New York to deliver the lecture that you're going to give. Have you looked into what the labor market is like here and the economy here? Have you been able to localize your lecture for tonight's audience?
Yeah, I have been reading up on Newfoundland and Labrador, and I do see that there's a lot of concern of the shrinkage of the labor force, and I think immigration can help stem that shrinkage to a great extent.
And be an economic driver more broadly?
Yes, definitely. It makes Newfoundland an attractive place for investment, the larger the population there is, and therefore driving jobs for other locals as well.
Would those arguments apply differently to a concentrated population area like St. John's and the surrounding area versus the more sparsely populated rural parts of the province?
I think it would apply equally to both places, because I think both places have needs that can be filled by immigrant workers.
What about the problem that some jurisdictions deal with, and we are one of them, that attracting immigrants is one thing, getting them to stay is quite another thing. Have economists looked into that? Have you got any theories on how a town, a city, a province can best go about convincing people to stay?
I think one of the biggest determinants of destination for immigrants is economic opportunities available. And the more vibrant economically a region is, the more attractive it is for immigrants. So I would say that the best thing to do is to make the region generally more attractive, not just for immigrants, but internal migrants as well.
How do we do that?
That's the $1 million question. I don't know in case of Newfoundland and Labrador, but I would leave it to the local experts to figure that out.
We do hear arguments from some quarters that lower taxes, a more attractive tax structure, would be make people want to stay, and some who argue that taxation is a fairly minor factor in all this. Does your research show anything one way or the other?
Well, it's not necessary that taxation would drive people away. I mean, in the United States, states such as New York and California are high-tax states, but people do stay there because the benefits compared to the taxes are also very high. So I think what matters is the ratio of benefits versus the costs, and people are willing to endure higher costs if the benefits are high enough.
Is this your first visit to Newfoundland?
Yes.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoy the visit, and best of luck with the lecture.
Thank you very much.
That's Dr. Nimish Adhia. He's an assistant professor of economics at Manhattanville College in New York. His lecture is entitled, Do Immigrants Steal Jobs? He gave us a pretty good précis of it, but you can hear the full thing tonight at 7:30 at Memorial University Science Building. It's in room 2036.
All right, coming up, we're going